The great council chamber stretched high above like a crystal cathedral. Thousands of alien beings filled the floating seats that circled the center stage, their voices mixed together in a low hum that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Ambassador. Hyun-soo stood at the center of it all, his hands steady at his sides despite the weight of so many eyes watching him. He wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Next to the glowing robes of the Valen delegates and the flowing metal suits of the Karathi, he looked plain, almost boring. That was exactly what they expected from humans, and Hyun-soo knew it. Behind him, Dr. Minji Kim waited with perfect stillness. She had trained for this moment for 3 years. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple tie, and she wore the practical gray jumpsuit of Earth's Science Division. But it was not Minji that drew the stares and whispers from the alien crowd. It was Beko. The Siberian tiger sat beside her like a living statue carved from orange fire and black shadows. His massive head was level with Minji's shoulder, and his amber eyes moved slowly across the chamber. He weighed over 400 pounds of pure muscle and predator instinct. Every alien in the room could feel his presence like a low electric current in the air. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Hyun-soo began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sound system. Earth formally requests consideration for the Elite Guard Partnership Program. The response was immediate. Laughter rippled through the alien delegates like water flowing downhill. The Valens made a sound like crystal bells breaking. The Karathi hissed their amusement through their long necks. Even the usually silent Nexari buzzed with what could only be mockery. Counselor Thane of the Valen hegemony rose from his floating platform. His body was tall and thin, made of what looked like living blue crystal that caught the chamber's lights and threw them back in rainbow patterns. When he spoke, his voice rang like music played on glass. "Earth brings us a beast," Thane said, and more laughter followed his words. "A simple animal. While the great civilizations of the galaxy have moved beyond such primitive partnerships, humanity still clings to creatures that think only of food and territory." Minji felt Beko's muscles tense slightly under his fur, but the tiger remained perfectly still. His ears flicked once toward the sound of Thane's voice, then returned to their forward position. To most observers, he seemed like nothing more than a very large, very dangerous pet. "The Elite Guard program requires the highest level of tactical thinking and problem-solving," continued another voice from the crowd. This came from Counselor Yara of the Karathi Collective. Her serpentine body coiled around her floating platform, scales shifting from green to silver as she spoke. "How can a creature driven by hunting instincts possibly qualify for such advanced work?" The Karathi delegation began displaying their own partnership candidates. Beings of pure energy flowed like liquid light around their handlers. These energy creatures could pass through solid walls, scan electronic systems, and communicate through direct mental contact. The crowd murmured with approval. Next, the Nexari presented their contribution. Hundreds of small drone units moved in perfect formation around their controller. Each drone was no bigger than a human hand, but together they could reconfigure into any shape needed. They could become tools, weapons, or even simple vehicles. Their movements were so perfectly coordinated that they seemed to share a single mind. "Now these," announced Thane with obvious pleasure, "are true partnerships. Advanced beings working with advanced technology, not primitive flesh bound by primitive instincts." The Valens then showed their own candidates, crystalline constructs that looked like walking sculptures of living diamond. They could analyze molecular structures by touch, resist extreme temperatures, and process information faster than most computers. Their movements were graceful and precise, like dancers made of starlight. Each demonstration brought more applause and approving sounds from the council. The alien delegates nodded to each other with satisfaction. This was what they expected from advanced civilizations: clean technology, perfect control, predictable results. Ambassador Hyun-soo waited until The demonstrations finished. The chamber grew quiet as attention returned to the small human delegation. He could feel the weight of their expectations. They expected him to withdraw Earth's application. They expected humanity to recognize how outclassed they were. "Impressive displays," Hyunsu said calmly. "But I noticed something interesting. Your partnerships are all based on creation and control. You made these beings to serve specific purposes. You programmed them to behave in predetermined ways." "Of course," said Thane, sounding puzzled. "That is how rational beings solve problems. You identify needs and create solutions." "But what if there was another way?" Hyunsu asked. "What if partnership meant something different? What if it meant cooperation between two independent minds, each contributing their natural strengths?" The laughter started again, but this time, it was smaller. Some of the delegates seemed curious about where the human ambassador was going with his questions. "You cannot cooperate with a beast," declared Counselor Yara. "Animals do not think. They react. They follow instincts that were useful when they lived in caves and forests. In space, such creatures are useless." Dr. Minji Kim stepped forward for the first time. Her voice was quiet but clear. "With respect, Counselor, you are making assumptions about something you have never studied." She placed one hand gently on Baeko's head. The tiger turned to look at her with those incredible amber eyes. "You assume that because his intelligence is different from yours, it must be inferior. Are you claiming that beast can think?" Thane's crystalline form flickered with amusement. "I am claiming that you do not understand what thinking means," Minji replied. "You equate intelligence with technology. But intelligence comes in many forms. Baeko has been my partner for 6 years. In that time, he has learned to solve problems that would challenge your best computer systems." The chamber filled with fresh laughter, louder than before. Several delegates made comments in their own languages that the translation system rendered as various forms of impossible and ridiculous. "Perhaps," said Hyunsu, raising his voice slightly to be heard, over the noise, "you would like to see a demonstration before you judge." The laughter began to fade as delegates looked at each other with interest. This would be entertaining, at least. Watching the primitive humans embarrass themselves in front of the greatest civilizations in the galaxy. "Very well," announced Thane, with obvious pleasure. "We will arrange trials at the orbital training facility, but when your beast fails these tests, humanity must agree to withdraw from elite guard consideration for 50 standard years." Hyunsu nodded once. "Agreed. But when Baeko succeeds, humanity gains full membership in the program." As the council session ended and delegates began filing out, Baeko rose smoothly to his feet. His movement was liquid grace contained in massive muscle. He stretched once, then padded over to stand beside Minji. The tiger's amber eyes surveyed the emptying chamber with calm intelligence. Several delegates who saw that look felt something cold touch their spines. There was something in those eyes that did not match their expectations of a simple beast. Something that suggested they might have underestimated what they were dealing with. The orbital training station hung in space like a giant metal flower with silver petals that caught starlight. Each petal was actually a massive testing chamber designed to push the limits of any being brave enough to enter. The station had seen 1,000 different species prove their worth over the centuries. Today, it would witness something entirely new. Dr. Minji Kim stood at the observation deck's thick windows, watching transport ships dock one after another. Each ship brought more alien delegates eager to watch what they expected would be humanity's spectacular failure. The viewing galleries were filling with creatures from across the galaxy, their excited chatter mixing into a symphony of anticipation. Baeko lay stretched out on the cool metal floor beside her, but his amber eyes tracked every movement in the corridor beyond the glass. His ears swiveled toward sounds that Minji could not hear. To anyone watching, he looked relaxed, almost lazy. They had no idea he was cataloging every scent, every footstep, every voice that passed by their waiting area. "The Karathi delegation is preparing for their demonstration," announced a mechanical voice from the station's communication system. "All observers, please take your designated positions." Minji watched through the window as the first testing chamber activated. The room beyond the thick barrier walls lit up with harsh white light. Obstacles rose from the floor like mechanical mountains. Doors sealed shut with heavy metal locks. Sensors and cameras tracked every movement from a dozen different angles. Counselor Yara slithered into the chamber, followed by three beings that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. The energy creatures flowed around her like living water, their forms shifting from solid to transparent and back again. When they moved, they left brief trails of silver light in the air. The first test began immediately. A wall of solid metal blocked the path forward, with no visible way around or over it. The energy beings simply flowed through the barrier as if it did not exist. On the other side, they reformed into solid shapes and began working on a complex puzzle that would unlock the next section. "Impressive," murmured Ambassador Hyun-soo, who had joined Minji at the observation window. "They move like water through stone." The Karathi partnership completed their test run in 12 minutes. Every obstacle had been overcome through the energy being's ability to change their physical state. They could become solid to manipulate objects, gaseous to pass through barriers, or pure energy to interface directly with computer systems. The viewing galleries erupted in approving sounds, clicks, whistles, and harmonic tones that served as applause among the various alien species. Counselor Yara accepted the praise with obvious satisfaction, her scales shifting to bright gold patterns. Next came the Nexari demonstration. Their controller entered the chamber alone, but within seconds, hundreds of small drones poured in after her like a metallic storm. The drones moved with perfect coordination, some joining together to form larger tools, while others worked independently on different parts of each puzzle. When they encountered a locked door, 50 drones combined into a single cutting tool that sliced through the metal in seconds. When they needed to reach a high platform, others formed a perfect staircase that their controller could climb. The entire swarm worked as if controlled by a single incredible mind. Their completion time was 8 minutes and 30 seconds. The crowd's approval was even louder this time. "Fascinating," said a new voice behind them. Minji turned to see Dr. Jae-hoon approaching with his partner, Koma, a black and white border collie whose intelligent eyes seemed to take in everything at once. But notice how both demonstrations relied on abilities that bypassed the challenges, rather than solve them. The Velan delegation took their turn next. Counselor Thane entered with two crystalline constructs that moved like walking statues made of living diamond. They approached each obstacle methodically, analyzing the molecular structure of barriers, calculating the precise force needed to break locks, and processing vast amounts of data in seconds. Their approach was different from the others. Instead of bypassing challenges, they solved them through raw computational power and physical precision. They completed the course in 9 minutes and 14 seconds, their movements elegant and perfectly efficient. As the cheering died down, the mechanical voice announced, "Earth delegation, please prepare for testing." The viewing galleries fell silent. Minji could feel thousands of alien eyes focused on her as she walked toward the chamber entrance. Beko rose smoothly and padded beside her, his massive paws silent on the metal floor. The tiger showed no signs of nervousness or excitement. He simply walked with the calm confidence of a predator who had never known defeat. "Good luck," called Dr. Jae-hoon. "Show them what real partnership looks like." The chamber doors sealed behind them with a heavy thud. Harsh lights activated, and Minji felt the weight of all those watching eyes through the observation windows. The testing computer's voice echoed in the space around them. "Begin when ready." Minji took a deep breath and looked down at her partner. Beko was already studying the first obstacle, his head tilted slightly as he processed what he saw. The challenge was a series of locked doors, each requiring a different solution to open. The previous teams had used their special abilities to bypass or force their way through, but Bako approached the first door differently. He walked up to it slowly, sniffing at the edges and examining the locking mechanism with careful attention. His amber eyes moved from the lock to Minji, then back to the lock. She understood immediately. With a slight gesture of her hand, she indicated the manual release panel hidden beside the doorframe. Most beings would miss it entirely. But Bako's enhanced senses had detected the subtle differences in metal composition and temperature that revealed its location. The tiger rose on his hind legs, placing his massive front paws on either side of the panel. His claws, normally deadly weapons, became precision tools as he carefully manipulated the hidden switches in the correct sequence. The door slid open with a soft hiss. In the observation galleries, the laughter that had started to build suddenly stopped. This was not what they had expected. The beast was not charging forward in blind aggression or relying on brute force. He was thinking, problem-solving, working with his partner in ways that suggested genuine intelligence. The second obstacle was more complex, a pressure plate puzzle that required precise timing and weight distribution. Again, Bayeko studied the challenge carefully. He tested one plate with a gentle paw, feeling how it responded to pressure. Then he looked at Minji with those incredible amber eyes. She nodded once. Moving with the fluid grace of a natural hunter, Beko positioned himself on the pressure plates in a specific pattern, while Minji stood on others. Their combined weight and timing activated the mechanism perfectly, opening the path to the next section. "Impossible," whispered someone in the galleries. "The creature is actually thinking." As they moved deeper into the testing chamber, something became clear to every observer. This was not a trained animal following simple commands. This was genuine partnership. Beko would assess each challenge, communicate his observations to Minji through subtle body language, and then work with her to develop solutions that neither could have achieved alone. When they encountered a barrier too high for Minji to climb, Beko braced himself against it, becoming a living ladder. When they found a space too narrow for the tiger to pass through, Minji scouted ahead and guided him to an alternative route with hand signals he understood perfectly. Their final challenge was the most complex yet, a combination lock with hundreds of possible sequences designed to test computational abilities and pattern recognition. The other teams had used their advanced processing power or direct technological interface. But Beko did something none of them expected. He sat down in front of the lock and simply listened, his ears swiveled forward, tracking sounds too subtle for any recording device to detect. As Minji began testing different combinations, Baeko's acute hearing picked up the microscopic differences in the mechanical clicks that indicated correct versus incorrect choices. Within 3 minutes, they had solved a puzzle that should have taken advanced computer systems much longer. As the final door opened, Beko walked calmly to the exit and sat down beside it. His amber eyes found Minji's, and he waited patiently for whatever instruction might come next. The chamber fell completely silent. Their completion time flashed on the displays around the observation galleries, 7 minutes and 12 seconds. Not only had they solved every challenge, they had done it faster than any of the advanced technological partnerships. But more disturbing to the watching aliens was how they had done it. Through cooperation, communication, and a kind of intelligence that did not fit into any of their carefully defined categories. In the galleries above, thousands of alien beings stared down at the simple human woman and her tiger partner with something that might have been the first stirring of genuine respect. Or perhaps it was fear. The observation galleries remained eerily quiet as the numbers glowed on every display screen. 7 minutes and 12 seconds, the fastest completion time in the station's recorded history. But the alien delegates were not celebrating this achievement. Instead, they stared down at the human woman and her tiger with expressions that ranged from confusion to growing unease. Dr. Minji Kim scratched behind Beko's ears as they waited in the chamber exit. The tiger's rumbling purr was so deep it seemed to vibrate through the metal floor. To Minji, this was simply her partner expressing contentment after a job well done. To the watching aliens, it was another unsettling reminder that this massive predator was completely relaxed around his human companion. Ambassador Hyun-soo stepped forward to the gallery's communication panel. As you can see, Earth's partnership methods produce excellent results. Perhaps we could discuss membership in the Elite Guard program now. Wait, interrupted Counselor Thane, his crystalline form flickering with agitated patterns of light. One demonstration proves nothing. Where are the rest of your partnership teams? Every other delegation brought multiple examples of their methods. Hyun-soo smiled calmly. They are arriving now. As if summoned by his words, the chamber doors opened to admit more humans. Captain Dong-wook entered first, wearing a modified, environmental suit that connected to a larger apparatus being wheeled in behind him. The apparatus was filled with clear liquid, and swimming inside it was Nabi, a bottlenose dolphin whose dark eyes sparkled with obvious intelligence. The dolphin's environmental suit was a marvel of human engineering, allowing her to breathe and move freely in various atmospheric conditions. But what caught the alien's attention was how she interacted with her human partner. Through the suit's communication system, she made a series of clicks and whistles that Captain Dong-wook seemed to understand perfectly. She says hello to everyone, Dong-wook announced cheerfully, though his words brought more stares than smiles from the alien observers. Next came Dr. Jae-hoon with Kokoma, the border collie whose alert expression seemed to take in everything at once. The dog's black and white coat was glossy with health, and she moved with the confident gait of an animal that knew exactly what she was capable of achieving. But it was the fourth team that truly shocked the assembled delegates. Commander So Young walked in calmly, followed by what appeared to be empty air. Only the faintest shimmer revealed the presence of her partner, Barum, a specially trained octopus whose chameleonic abilities made him nearly invisible against any background. "How many of these partnerships do you humans have?" asked Counselor Yara, her serpentine body coiling nervously around her platform. "Earth has trained over 2,000 human-animal teams," replied Hyun-soo. "Each partnership takes years to develop, and every animal chooses to participate willingly." "Chooses?" The word came from multiple alien voices at once. The concept seemed to disturb them deeply. "Of course," said Dr. Minji Kim, stepping up to the communication panel. "True partnership requires willing cooperation from both sides. We do not force our companions to work with us. They choose to stay because they find the work interesting and because they trust us." To demonstrate this point, she made a simple gesture toward the chamber exit. Baeko immediately rose and padded toward the door, but instead of leaving, he stopped and looked back at her questioningly. With another small hand sign, she indicated he should return, and the massive tiger walked back to sit beside her without hesitation. "He could leave at any time," Minji explained. "The chamber is not locked, but he stays because this is what he wants to do." The alien observers found this concept deeply troubling. In their civilizations, partnerships were based on programming, genetic modification, or technological control. The idea that a powerful creature would choose to cooperate simply because it wanted to was almost incomprehensible. "Let us see more demonstrations," declared Counselor Thane, though his tone suggested he was hoping to find flaws rather than admiring abilities. The testing chamber reconfigured itself for the next challenge. This time, the scenario was a rescue simulation. Multiple chambers contained simulated survivors who needed to be located and extracted within a strict time limit. The environment included collapsed structures, flooded sections, and areas filled with toxic gases. Captain Dong-wook and Nabi entered first. The dolphin's echolocation abilities allowed her to map the entire complex structure within minutes, locating survivors that sophisticated sensors had missed. Her three-dimensional navigation skills, evolved for life in the ocean, made her perfectly adapted for the zero-gravity sections where other teams might struggle. Working together, Dong-wook provided the technical expertise while Nabi used her natural sonar to guide them to trapped survivors with pinpoint accuracy. They rescued all targets in record time, moving through the complex environment with a grace that left the watching aliens speechless. Dr. Jae-hoon and Koma demonstrated different but equally impressive abilities. The Border Collie's hearing was so acute she could detect the heartbeats of buried survivors through tons of debris. Her intelligence, bred and trained over generations, allowed her to process complex problems and communicate solutions to her human partner through an intricate system of barks, body postures, and eye movements. When they encountered a survivor trapped behind a locked door with no apparent way to reach the controls, Koma studied the problem for less than 30 seconds before indicating a ventilation shaft that Jae-hoon had overlooked. Her smaller size allowed her to navigate through the narrow space and activate the release mechanism from the inside. Commander So-young and Baram showcased abilities that seemed almost magical to the alien observers. The octopus could squeeze through spaces that appeared impossibly small, his boneless body flowing like liquid through gaps barely wider than a coin. His camouflage was so perfect that even the station's advanced sensors lost track of him. But what impressed the watchers most was the problem-solving intelligence Baram displayed. When faced with a complex electronic lock, the octopus examined it carefully with his sensitive tentacles, then manipulated multiple switches simultaneously, in a sequence that unlocked the mechanism. He had learned to read human technology and operate it with tentacles that were more precise than most robotic tools. Finally, Minji and Baiko took their turn at the rescue simulation. The tiger's enhanced senses detected things that no technology could match. He could smell fear, injury, and even the specific scents that indicated different types of medical emergencies. His ability to move silently through debris fields made him ideal for reaching survivors without causing further structural damage. But it was during this demonstration that something truly remarkable happened. When they reached a survivor trapped under heavy rubble, Baiko studied the collapsed structure carefully. Instead of simply following Minji's lead, the tiger moved to a specific support beam and looked back at her with obvious concern. Minji examined the area he indicated and realized that her planned approach would have destabilized the entire section, potentially crushing the person they were trying to save. Baiko had seen structural weaknesses that she had missed, and his warning had prevented a disaster. "The beast corrected the human," whispered someone in the galleries. "It saw problems she could not see." This observation sent ripples of unease through the alien observers. They were watching something that challenged their fundamental understanding of intelligence and partnership. These animals were not just following orders or responding to training. They were thinking independently, making decisions, and even teaching their human partners. As the demonstrations concluded, the 4 human teams gathered in the chamber's center. Their animal companions showed no signs of stress or fatigue. Instead, they seemed energized by the challenges, eager for whatever might come next. Baiko stretched luxuriously and yawned, displaying teeth that could crush metal, but his relaxed posture and the gentle way he rubbed against Minji's legs spoke of complete trust and contentment. Nabi clicked and whistled what sounded like jokes to Captain Dong-wook, who laughed and responded in the same clicking language he had learned to speak with her. Koma sat at perfect attention beside Dr. Jae-hoon, her tail wagging slowly as she watched the alien observers with bright, intelligent eyes that seemed to understand far more than any mere animal should. And Baram, still nearly invisible against the chamber floor, extended one tentacle to gently touch Commander So-young's hand in what could only be described as an affectionate gesture. In the observation galleries above, thousands of alien beings struggled to process what they had witnessed. These partnerships went beyond anything in their experience. They represented a form of cooperation that their advanced civilizations had never achieved. And somewhere in the back of their collective consciousness, a disturbing thought was beginning to take shape. If humans could form such bonds with their planet's animals, what might they be capable of achieving when they turned their attention to the stars? The celebration in the observation galleries died instantly when the station's emergency alarms began shrieking. Red lights flashed throughout the massive facility, and the mechanical voice that had been calmly announcing test results now carried urgent warnings. Alert! Alert! Hostile vessels detected approaching the station. All personnel report to emergency stations immediately. This is not a drill. Counselor Thane's crystalline form flickered with patterns of confusion and fear. What is happening? The testing schedule made no mention of combat scenarios. Ambassador Hyun-Soo was already moving toward the communication panels, his diplomat's calm replaced by the focused intensity of someone who had served in Earth's military before joining. The Diplomatic Corps. Because this is not part of the testing schedule, those are real enemy ships. Through the station's massive viewing ports, dark shapes became visible against the star field. The ships were angular and black, seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with predatory grace, closing the distance to the station with obvious hostile intent. Void Reapers, breathed Captain Dong-wook, recognizing the distinctive silhouettes from intelligence briefings. How did they find us here? The Void Reapers were the galaxy's newest terror, a mysterious enemy that had been attacking outer colonies for the past 2 years. No one knew where they came from or what they wanted. They appeared without warning, struck with devastating efficiency, and vanished before any defense could be organized. The station's defensive systems activated automatically, but the first salvo from the attacking ships sent electromagnetic pulses through the facility's power grid. Lights flickered and died in sections. The artificial gravity fluctuated, causing several alien delegates to float helplessly in the suddenly chaotic environment. All partnership teams to battle stations, ordered the facility commander through the failing communication system. Prepare to repel borders. In the observation galleries, panic spread like wildfire among the alien delegates. The Karathi energy beings began flickering unstably, their forms disrupted by the electromagnetic interference. The Nexari drones lost their perfect coordination, some crashing into walls while others spun aimlessly through the air. Even the sophisticated Valen constructs showed signs of malfunction, their crystalline bodies developing cracks as their internal systems struggled with the energy disruptions. But in the testing chamber below, something remarkable was happening. Beko had risen to his feet at the first sound of the alarms, his massive head turning toward threats that human senses could not yet detect. His amber eyes tracked movement through the station's corridors, following sounds and scents that the facility's sensors had missed. Nabi's sonar painted detailed pictures of the station's layout, identifying structural weak points and hidden passages that even the station's designers had forgotten about. Her clicks and whistles took on new urgency as she communicated tactical information to Captain Dong-wook. Koma's acute hearing picked up the subtle vibrations of the enemy ships. Docking with the station's outer hull, her body language became alert and focused, the playful energy of the demonstrations replaced by the serious concentration of a working dog facing a real threat. And Barum, the nearly invisible octopus, had already begun moving through the chamber's ventilation system, his camouflaged form scouting ahead to assess the approaching danger. Dr. Minji Kim felt Beko's muscles tense under her hand and understood immediately. Her partner had detected something that all the station's sophisticated sensors had missed. "They are already inside," she announced calmly, 3 levels below us, moving through the service corridors. "Impossible," declared Counselor Yara, her serpentine body coiling nervously. "Our sensors show no breach of the hull," But even as she spoke, emergency teams were reporting exactly what Minji had predicted. Enemy forces were moving through the station's lower levels, having somehow bypassed all the security systems. The facility commander's voice crackled through the damaged communication system. How did you know about the breach? Minji simply gestured toward Becho, who was now standing at full alert, his predatory instincts focused on threats that technology could not detect. He can smell them. They have been inside the station for at least 10 minutes. This revelation sent fresh waves of panic through the alien observers. Their advanced detection systems had failed completely, while a simple biological creature had identified the threat immediately. The lights went out completely as the Void Reaper's electromagnetic weapons disabled the station's main power grid. Emergency lighting cast red shadows through the corridors, and the artificial gravity failed in several sections. All electronic systems are compromised, reported the facility's technical officer. We are effectively blind and helpless. But the human-animal teams were already adapting to conditions that would have paralyzed their alien counterparts. Captain Dongwook sealed his environmental suit and activated Nabi's mobile tank. The dolphin's natural navigation abilities worked perfectly in the three-dimensional environment of zero gravity. She had evolved to move through a world without up or down, making her ideally suited for combat in the station's chaotic conditions. Dr. Jae-hoon released Coma from her leash, and the border collie immediately began moving through the darkened corridors with confident steps. Her night vision and enhanced hearing made darkness irrelevant. She could track the enemy forces by sound and scent alone. Commander So-young lost contact with Baram entirely as the octopus vanished into the station's hidden spaces, but she knew he would be gathering intelligence and positioning himself where he could do the most good, and Minji found herself relying on abilities she had never fully appreciated before. Baeko's senses painted a detailed picture of their surroundings that no technology could match. He could track the enemy through the maze of corridors, identify their numbers and positions, and even determine their emotional states through subtle chemical signals. The first group of Void Reapers appeared in the main corridor, their dark armor making them nearly invisible in the red emergency lighting. They moved with mechanical precision, their weapons scanning for targets with electronic efficiency. But they were not prepared for what they encountered. Beko struck from the shadows like a force of nature, 400 pounds of muscle, and predatory instinct moving with silence that defied belief. The lead Reaper went down before he could raise his weapon, overwhelmed by an attack that came from an angle their tactical systems had never considered. The remaining enemies tried to respond, but their electronic targeting systems were useless against a threat that moved like liquid shadow through the darkened corridors. Beko seemed to know where they would aim before they did, avoiding their weapons with movements that looked almost supernatural. Meanwhile, Nabi was using the station's flooded sections to her advantage, moving through areas where the enemy could not follow. Her sonar gave Captain Dongwook perfect tactical information about enemy positions, allowing him to coordinate defensive efforts with an accuracy that amazed the facility's remaining personnel. Coma had become a living reconnaissance system, moving ahead of human defenders to identify threats and ambush points. Her ability to communicate complex tactical information through barks and body language allowed Dr. Jae-hoon to direct defensive efforts with precision that electronic communication systems could not match. And Baram was proving that intelligence came in forms the galaxy had never imagined. The octopus was sabotaging enemy equipment from within the ventilation system, his tentacles precise enough to disable weapons and communication gear without triggering any security alerts. In the observation galleries, the alien delegates watched, in stunned silence, as the humans and their animal partners systematically outmaneuvered an enemy that had defeated some of the galaxy's most advanced military forces. "This is impossible," whispered Counselor Thane. "Those creatures are operating in complete darkness, with no electronic support, against enemies equipped with the most advanced technology available." "Not impossible," replied Ambassador Hyun-soo. who had remained calm throughout the crisis. Just different. Our partners do not rely on technology because they do not need it. Evolution gave them abilities that your civilizations replaced with machines. As the battle continued through the station's corridors, it became clear that the Void Reapers had made a critical error. They had prepared to fight against advanced technological civilizations that would be helpless when their systems failed. But they had never encountered enemies who fought with abilities that predated technology by millions of years, abilities that no amount of electronic warfare could disrupt. The tide of battle was turning, and the galaxy's most advanced civilizations were learning a lesson that would reshape their understanding of what it meant to be truly prepared for anything the universe might offer. In the darkness of the station's corridors, predator and prey were discovering that sometimes the old ways were still the best ways. The Void Reapers had never experienced fear before this day. Their species had evolved beyond such primitive emotions, replacing them with cold calculation and mechanical efficiency. But as they moved through the darkened corridors of the training station, something was hunting them that did not fit into any of their tactical databases. Commander Kett paused at an intersection, his advanced sensors sweeping the area for threats. The electromagnetic pulse weapons had disabled all the station's systems exactly as planned. The alien defenders should have been helpless, stumbling blind through their own facility while his forces moved with perfect coordination. Instead, his soldiers were disappearing one by one into the shadows. The latest casualty had been Private Nex, who had been moving through what should have been a secure corridor. The soldier's final transmission had been cut short by what sounded like a low rumble that came from no throat the Reapers had ever encountered. Commander Kett activated his communication system to contact the remaining members of his strike team, but received only static in response. Their quantum-encrypted channels should have been impossible to jam or intercept, yet somehow their communications were being systematically disrupted. What he could not know was that Bahram had spent the last hour flowing through the station's ventilation system, his boneless body accessing control panels that the Reapers had never imagined could be reached. The octopus possessed an intelligence that had evolved to solve three-dimensional puzzles in the depths of Earth's oceans, and the station's electronic systems were simply another type of maze to be navigated and understood. Each communication relay that Bahram disabled made the enemy forces more isolated and vulnerable. But the octopus was doing more than simple sabotage. His 8 arms worked independently, rewiring circuits and rerouting power in ways that would give the human defenders crucial advantages when they needed them most. Meanwhile, Beko was demonstrating why tigers had been apex predators for millions of years before technology even existed. The massive cat moved through the station's corridors like a ghost made of muscle and fury. His padded paws made no sound on the metal flooring, and his amber eyes could see perfectly in conditions that left even the Reaper's advanced night vision struggling. But it was not just Beko's physical abilities that made him so effective against the invaders. It was his intelligence, honed through years of partnership with Dr. Minji Kim. He understood tactics in ways that went beyond instinct, combining his natural hunting skills with strategic thinking that the enemy could not predict or counter. When a group of 3 Reapers attempted to secure the station's main power junction, Beko was waiting for them. He had positioned himself not where they expected to find resistance, but where their training would force them to go when their initial plan failed. The tiger struck when their formation was most vulnerable, during the moment when they were transitioning from their planned approach to emergency protocols. His attack came from above, dropping from an overhead maintenance shaft that their sensors had dismissed as too narrow for any threat. 400 pounds of predator landed among them with devastating effect. The Reaper's armor was designed to protect against energy weapons and projectile attacks, but nothing in their experience had prepared them for the focused fury of claws that could shred steel and jaws that could crush reinforced composites. The engagement lasted less than 10 seconds, but in that time, the galaxy's most feared raiders learned what it meant to be prey. Captain Dongwook and Nabi were proving equally effective in the station's flooded sections. The Dolphins' echolocation painted perfect pictures of the underwater environment, allowing them to set ambushes that were impossible to detect or avoid. When a Reaper squad attempted to use the flooded corridors to reach the station's communications center, they found themselves facing an enemy that had evolved in three-dimensional aquatic environments. Nabi could change direction instantly, accelerate to speeds that made targeting impossible, and coordinate with her human partner through sonic communications that the enemy's equipment could not intercept or decode. The Reapers advanced underwater. Gear was no match for a creature that had been born to move through liquid environments. Nabi struck with precise efficiency, using her natural sonar to target the vulnerable joints in their armor, while Captain Dongwook provided covering fire from positions that the enemy could never have anticipated. Dr. Jae-hoon and Koma were conducting their own type of warfare in the station's maze of service tunnels. The Border Collie's intelligence, bred and trained over centuries to solve complex problems, allowed her to understand the three-dimensional tactical situation better than most military computers. Koma could predict where the enemy would go before. They decided to go there, positioning herself to intercept their movements or guide them into carefully prepared traps. Her ability to communicate complex information through subtle body language gave Dr. Jae-hoon tactical awareness that no electronic system could provide. When a group of Reapers attempted to reach the station's control center through what they believed was a secure route, they found themselves being herded like sheep by a predator that understood their psychology better than they understood it themselves. Koma used their own training against them, creating sounds and movements that triggered their programmed responses and drove them exactly where Dr. Jae-hoon was waiting with the station's few remaining security personnel. But it was the coordination between all the human-animal teams that truly turned the tide of battle. While the alien delegates huddled in their emergency shelters, the humans were conducting a form of warfare that the galaxy had never seen before. Dr. Minji Kim found herself at the center of a tactical network that operated without any electronic communication. Baeko's enhanced senses provided real-time intelligence about enemy movements throughout the station. His low rumbles and subtle changes in posture communicated more information than the most sophisticated battle management systems. Through hand signals and body language that she and her partner had perfected over years of training, Minji could direct Baeko's movements while simultaneously coordinating with the other human teams through simple visual cues. The result was a form of silent coordination that the Reapers could not intercept, decode, or disrupt. The human defenders moved through the station like a single organism with multiple bodies, each team supporting the others in ways that seemed almost supernatural. Commander Ket realized his mission was failing when his forces began reporting encounters with threats that should not have existed. His soldiers described being attacked by invisible enemies that moved through water like living torpedoes, creatures that struck from shadows and vanished before return fire could be directed, and animals that seemed to predict their tactical decisions before they made them. "Request immediate extraction," he transmitted to his command ship. "Enemy capabilities exceed all intelligence estimates." But even as he made the request, Commander Ket knew it might be too late. His force of 50 elite soldiers had been reduced to fewer than 20, and those remaining were scattered throughout the station, isolated and unable to coordinate effectively. The humans and their animal partners had done more than simply defend the training facility. They had turned a military disaster into a demonstration of capabilities that the galaxy had never imagined possible. In the observation galleries, the alien delegates watched their displays in stunned silence as the tactical situation became clear. The most feared raiders in known space were being systematically defeated by creatures they had dismissed as primitive beasts. "How is this possible?" whispered Counselor Yara, her serpentine form coiled tight with nervous energy. "Our most advanced military forces have been unable to stop the Void Reapers." Ambassador Hyun-soo, who had remained calm throughout the crisis, finally allowed himself a slight smile. Because your advanced forces rely on technology that can be disrupted or countered. Our partners rely on abilities that have been tested and refined over millions of years of evolution. As the battle reached its climax, the surviving Reapers found themselves trapped in the station's central hub with no way to escape or communicate with their extraction ships. They were surrounded by enemies they could not see, track, or predict. For the first time in their species' history, the galaxy's most feared predators had become prey. And in the darkness of the disabled station, they were learning that sometimes the most advanced technology in the universe was no match for the simple, terrifying efficiency of nature's perfect hunters. The emergency lighting flickered back to life throughout the training station as Bahram completed his work in the power distribution center. The octopus had spent hours flowing through maintenance shafts and service tunnels, his 8 arms rewiring, systems with a precision that impressed even the station's engineers. As power returned to the facility's critical systems, the full scope of what had happened became clear to everyone watching the security displays. The Void Reaper's invasion. Force had been completely neutralized. 50 of the galaxy's most feared raiders lay unconscious or restrained throughout the station, captured by a handful of humans and their animal partners working in conditions that should have made coordinated defense impossible. In the station's central hub, the remaining Reaper forces had surrendered when they realized they were surrounded by enemies they could not see or effectively fight. Commander Ket stood with his hands secured behind his back, staring at Dr. Minji Kim and Baeko, with an expression that might have been respect. The massive tiger sat calmly beside his human partner, showing no signs of the violence he had unleashed just hours before. His amber eyes tracked the movements of security personnel as they processed the captured raiders, but his posture suggested nothing more than mild interest in the proceedings. "I do not understand," Commander Ket said quietly, speaking directly to Minji. "My soldiers are trained from birth for combat. They have defeated armies equipped with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. How were we overcome by simple creatures?" Minji considered the question seriously before answering. "You were not defeated by simple creatures. You were defeated by partnerships that your people have never learned to understand." "Partnerships?" The alien commander's voice carried genuine confusion. "But they are animals. They cannot think strategically or make complex decisions." Baeko chose that moment to demonstrate exactly how wrong that assumption was. The tiger rose smoothly and padded over to the chamber's exit controls. Without any signal from Minji, he manipulated the door mechanism with his massive paws, opening the chamber to allow the security teams easier access. Then he returned to Minji's side and sat down, his intelligent gaze fixed on the captured commander as if to say, "You were saying?" "Your mistake," explained Dr. Jae-hoon as he approached with Koma trotting beside him, "was assuming that intelligence only comes in forms that resemble your own. You equate thinking with electronic processing and decision-making with computational analysis." Captain Dongwook arrived with Nabi's mobile tank, the dolphin clicking and whistling in what sounded like satisfaction at a job well done. "Our partners think differently than we do, but they think nonetheless. Their intelligence has been tested and refined by millions of years of survival in environments far more challenging than any battlefield." Commander So Young appeared from a ventilation shaft, followed by Bahram, who materialized from apparent nothingness as his camouflage faded. The octopus wrapped one tentacle gently around his partner's wrist in a gesture that spoke of affection and trust. "But more importantly," she added, "they choose to work with us. This is not programming or genetic conditioning. It is genuine cooperation between equals who bring different strengths to shared challenges." The captured Reaper commander studied each human-animal pair with growing amazement. "You are saying these creatures voluntarily fight alongside you? They are not compelled by technology or chemical control?" "Watch," said Minji simply. She made a gesture toward the exit, clearly, indicating that Baeko was free to leave. The tiger looked at the open door, then back at his partner, and deliberately lay down beside her feet. His choice was obvious and unmistakable. This simple demonstration sent shockwaves through the alien observers in the galleries above. The concept of voluntary cooperation between species was so foreign to their experience that many struggled to process what they were witnessing. Counselor Thane's crystalline form descended from the observation deck, his movements more cautious than they had been during the earlier demonstrations. "I must ask directly, Dr. Kim. How do you achieve such loyalty without neural implants or genetic programming?" Minji exchanged glances with her fellow humans before answering. "The same way any meaningful relationship is built, with time, patience, understanding, and mutual respect. We do not own our partners. We work with them because we trust each other. But surely there must be some form of control mechanism," insisted Counselor Yara, her serpentine body coiled with nervous energy. "What prevents these powerful creatures from turning on you?" Captain Dongwook laughed, a sound that seemed out of place in the tension-filled chamber. "The same thing that prevents you from turning on your closest friends, genuine affection and shared purpose." As if to demonstrate his point, Nabi began a series of clicks and whistles that clearly sounded like laughter. The dolphin was apparently enjoying the alien's confusion, and her amusement was infectious enough to make several of the human defenders smile. "This is the revelation that troubles you," observed Ambassador Hyeon-soo, who had been watching the proceedings with diplomatic calm. "You have spent so long focusing on technological advancement that you have forgotten what true partnership means." "We have not forgotten," protested Thane. "We have evolved beyond such primitive dependencies." "Have you?" asked Dr. Minji Kim quietly. "When the electromagnetic weapons disabled your systems, what happened to your energy beings and crystalline constructs?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. During the attack, the aliens' advanced partnerships had failed completely when their technological foundations were disrupted. Only the human-animal teams had continued to function effectively under conditions that rendered advanced systems useless. "Your partnerships are based on control and dependency," continued Minji. "When that control is broken, the partnership fails. Our relationships are based on trust and cooperation. They actually grow stronger under stress because both partners choose to support each other." Commander Ket, still secured and awaiting transport to detention facilities, spoke up unexpectedly. "We studied your species before this attack. Our intelligence indicated that humans were technologically inferior to the major galactic civilizations." "Technologically, we probably are," admitted Ambassador Hyeon-soo. "But we have something that your intelligence networks could not quantify. We have learned to form genuine partnerships with other forms of life. And that makes you more dangerous than any weapon we have encountered," the Reaper commander concluded with what sounded like grudging respect. As security teams escorted the captured raiders to detention, the alien delegates began to disperse toward their transport ships. The demonstrations were over, and the results were undeniable. Humanity had not only proven the effectiveness of their partnership methods, but had done so under the most extreme conditions possible. Counselor Thane paused at the chamber exit, his crystalline form flickering with patterns that suggested deep thought. "I find myself curious about something, Ambassador Hyun-soo. If your people can form such partnerships with the creatures of your own world, what might you accomplish when you begin forming partnerships with other sentient species, the Bai?" Question was clearly intended as a diplomatic overture, and Hyeon-soo recognized it as such. "I suppose we will find out together, Counselor. Assuming, of course, that humanity is accepted into the Elite Guard program." "Accepted?" Thane's form brightened with what might have been amusement. "Ambassador, after what we have witnessed today, I believe the real question is whether the Elite Guard program is worthy of humanity's participation. As the alien delegates departed, the human teams gathered in the center of the chamber. Their animal partners showed no signs of stress or fatigue from the day's events. Instead, they seemed energized and alert, ready for whatever challenges might come next. Beko rose and padded over to the chamber's exit controls. With the same careful precision he had demonstrated throughout the day, he opened the door and looked back at Dr. Minji Kim with patient, intelligent eyes. He was ready to go wherever she needed to go next. Ready for the next challenge, the next partnership, the next opportunity to prove that the bonds between species could be stronger than any technology the universe had to offer. As they walked toward the exit, Minji realized that this day had been about more than proving humanity's worth to the Galactic Council. It had been about demonstrating that true strength came not from dominance over nature, but from partnership with it. The station's corridors were filled with repair crews working to restore the damaged systems, but the real repairs would take much longer. The galaxy's understanding of intelligence, partnership, and advancement had been fundamentally challenged by what they had witnessed. "Dr. Kim," called a voice from behind them. She turned to see one of the Nexari delegates approaching, its multiple drone units moving in perfect formation around its central consciousness. "I must ask you something that troubles my collective mind." Minji paused, Beko sitting calmly beside her as the alien approached. "What troubles you?" "We have observed your partnership methods throughout this day," the Nexari continued, its drones shifting into a more relaxed formation. "We see genuine cooperation where we expected simple domination. We see intelligence where we expected only instinct. But most disturbing of all, we see choice where we believed none could exist." "Choice is what makes the partnership meaningful," Minji replied simply. "But how do you trust such choice?" pressed the alien. "How do you build civilization on foundations that cannot be programmed or controlled?" Beko chose that moment to demonstrate exactly what trust meant. Without any signal from Minji, the massive tiger rose and walked over to the Nexari delegate. The alien's drones immediately shifted into defensive positions, but Beko simply sat down within arm's reach of the strange creature and began to purr. The vibrations from his contentment filled the corridor, and the Nexari's drones slowly returned to their relaxed formation. "He is not afraid of us," the alien observed with wonder. "Should he be?" asked Minji. "You have shown no hostility toward him. But we are unknown, different, potentially dangerous." "So are we, from his perspective," Minji pointed out. "But Baeko judges beings by their actions, not their appearance or their technology. It is a form of wisdom that many advanced civilizations seem to have forgotten." The Nexari delegate was quiet for a long moment, its drones creating subtle patterns in the air that suggested deep thought. "Perhaps," it said finally, "advancement and wisdom are not the same thing." As they continued toward the exit, Ambassador Hyunsu caught up with them, his expression thoughtful. "The Council has reached a preliminary decision," he announced. "Humanity has been granted full membership in the Elite Guard program, along with an invitation to establish a training facility for interspecies partnership methods." "Training other species?" asked Captain Dong Wook, his eyebrows raised in surprise. "Apparently, several civilizations are interested in learning our methods," Hyunsu replied with a slight smile. "It seems that today's demonstration has convinced them that there might be value in partnerships based on trust, rather than control." Dr. Jae-hoon scratched behind Kokoma's ears as he considered this development. "It will not be easy. Learning to form genuine partnerships requires patience and humility that many advanced civilizations have forgotten. But it can be done," added Commander So Young, watching as Baram explored the corridor with obvious curiosity. "Every species has the capacity for cooperation. They simply need to remember how to use it." As they reached the station's main departure area, the human teams gathered for one final moment together. Their animal partners seemed to sense that something significant had occurred, though they probably could not understand the full implications of their success. "What happens now?" asked Captain Dongwook. "Now we go home," replied Ambassador Hyun-soo. "And we prepare to teach the galaxy that the greatest advancement is not the replacement of natural bonds, but their enhancement and celebration." Baiko padded over to the departure gate controls and looked back at Dr. Minji Kim with those incredible amber eyes. His message was clear without words. Wherever she needed to go next, he would be ready to follow. Not because he was programmed to obey, but because he chose to trust. As their transport ship prepared for departure, Minji looked back at the training station one final time. The facility was already buzzing with activity as engineers and scientists began planning for the new partnership training programs that would soon fill its chambers. The galaxy had learned something important today. True strength came not from dominance over nature, but from cooperation with it, not from the replacement of natural bonds, but from their enhancement and celebration. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, other species that had forgotten the value of genuine partnership would soon have the opportunity to remember what they had lost. The age of true interspecies cooperation was about to begin. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying them back toward Earth, Baiko settled down beside Minji's seat with a contented sigh. His amber eyes reflected the stars streaming past. The viewports and his steady purr filled the cabin with the sound of absolute trust. The message was clear to anyone who cared to listen. The strongest partnerships in the universe were built not on chains of command, but on bonds of choice. And humanity had just shown the galaxy what such partnerships could accomplish when they were given the chance to prove themselves.